The room fell silent except for papers hitting the table. My presentation sat there like a dead thing while Mr. Caldwell's voice cut through the air. Next time, try bringing ideas worth our time, Daniel. Maybe Trent can show you how it's done. Laughter rippled around the conference table. My jaw locked tight. Heat rushed to my face as I gripped the edge of the table. Trent smirked from across the room, the same man who'd copied my slides the night before when I left my laptop unlocked at my desk. I didn't say anything. I just stared at Caldwell, memorizing every detail of his triumphant grin, the way his eyes crinkled with satisfaction, the way he leaned back in his chair like a king on his throne. That's when something inside me snapped, not loudly, not dramatically. It was quiet, like a door closing softly in an empty house. Right there at that moment, I decided he would regret this, every single word, every humiliating second. I gathered my papers with steady hands and walked out of that conference room with my head high. Behind me, their laughter continued. They had no idea what I'd just set in motion. My name is Daniel Reed. I'm 32 years old and I've spent the last 3 years as a senior marketing strategist at Helios Tech. Those fancy brand campaigns that got the company national recognition, I built half of them from scratch, but nobody knew that. Mr. Caldwell always took the credit. I'd given him everything: late nights perfecting presentations, weekends researching market trends, holidays spent crafting strategies that saved the company thousands of dollars. I'd poured my soul into making Helios Tech successful. And what did I get? Public humiliation in front of my peers. I wasn't some naive kid fresh out of college. I had 7 years of marketing experience before joining Helios Tech. I knew my worth. But somehow Caldwell had convinced everyone else that I was just average, just useful, just replaceable. The truth was different. I'd been tracking my contributions for months, documenting every project, every success, every stolen idea. Not because I planned to leave. I did it because I'd seen this pattern before with other employees. Now that pattern was coming for me. But this time, things would end differently. After the meeting, I locked myself in the bathroom. My reflection looked like a stranger staring back at me, flushed cheeks, tight jaw, eyes that burned with something I hadn't felt in years, pure rage. I splashed cold water on my face and gripped the sink until my knuckles turned white. Caldwell's words echoed in my head. Maybe Trent can show you how it's done. Trent couldn't design a marketing strategy if his life depended on it. He was loud, confident, and excellent at pretending other people's work was his own. Caldwell loved him because Trent made him feel smart, because Trent laughed at his jokes and agreed with everything he said. I dried my face with paper towels and straightened my tie. My hands had stopped shaking, my breathing had slowed, that wild anger had transformed into something colder, something calculated. My resignation had always been a possibility lurking in the back of my mind. Now it has become something else entirely, a weapon. I walked back to my desk with a smile on my face. People glanced at me nervously, expecting tears or rage. Instead, I opened my laptop and got back to work like nothing had happened. That confused them more than anything. Trent wasn't talented. He was a mimic, a parrot who repeated phrases he'd heard smarter people say. He had a gift for making himself look good while contributing nothing of substance. Watching him parade my project around the office that afternoon made my stomach twist. He stood by the coffee machine explaining his brilliant strategy to anyone who would listen. Using my words, my research, my ideas. People nodded along impressed, some even congratulated him. I sat at my desk 30 feet away typing calmly on my keyboard. Inside I was building something they couldn't see yet. A timeline, a record, evidence. Caldwell walked past Trent and clapped him on the shoulder. "That's the kind of innovation we need around here," he announced loudly enough for everyone to hear. His eyes found mine across the office. The message was clear: this is what success looks like, not you. I smiled and went back to my work. Caldwell thought he'd broken me. He thought I'd accepted my place in the hierarchy. He had no idea I'd just declared war, a quiet war, a patient war, but a war nonetheless. This wasn't the first time Caldwell had done this. He had a pattern I'd observed over 3 years: use people until they are drained, discard them publicly to assert dominance, replace them with someone younger and easier to control. The last person who'd crossed him was a woman named Patricia. She'd been brilliant at data analysis. She'd questioned one of Caldwell's decisions in a meeting, backing up her concerns with solid research. 2 months later she was gone, no explanation, no severance, just disappeared one Friday afternoon with security escorting her out. I'd heard through the office gossip network that she was still unemployed 6 months later, broken, defeated, too scared to even use Helios Tech as a reference. Caldwell had made sure everyone knew what happened when you challenged him. I wasn't going to be Patricia. I wasn't going to disappear quietly into unemployment while Caldwell continued his reign of terror. I had something she didn't have: time, planning, and a very specific skill set that Caldwell had underestimated. I was a marketer. I knew how to build narratives, how to control information, how to make people see exactly what I wanted them to see. That week I became a different person at work. I smiled more. I agreed with everything Caldwell said. I laughed at Trent's terrible jokes. I made myself small and invisible. During meetings I took notes silently. When Caldwell made decisions I knew were wrong, I nodded supportively. When Trent presented ideas that were clearly stolen from others, I offered polite compliments. People started relaxing around me. The tension from Monday's meeting faded. Caldwell stopped watching me with that suspicious gleam in his eye. He thought he'd won. He thought he'd crushed whatever resistance I might have had. One afternoon, he stopped by my desk. "Good to see you're being a team player, Daniel," he said with a condescending pat on my shoulder. "Keep this up and you might have a future here after all." "Thank you, sir," I replied with a grateful smile. "I really appreciate the feedback from Monday. It helped me understand what you're looking for." He beamed with satisfaction and walked away. Behind him, I returned to my computer screen where I was quietly copying files to my personal encrypted drive. Insurance, I called it. Evidence, really, when the company's biggest client, Northedge Systems, emailed about renewing their annual marketing contract. I made sure to respond first. I'd been building a relationship with their account manager, Claire Donovan, for months. My response was perfect. Polite, helpful, professional, not too eager, not too distant, just right. "Hi Claire, great to hear from you. I'd love to discuss the renewal and show you what we've been working on. Would next Thursday work for a call?" Her response came within an hour. "Daniel, you always make things so easy." "Thursday at 2 works perfectly, looking forward to it." I smiled at my screen. That single line meant everything. She didn't say looking forward to speaking with Helios Tech. She said looking forward to it after using my name. It wasn't the company she trusted, it was me. Caldwell didn't know about the email yet. I'd set up a separate folder that forwarded copies to my personal account while keeping the originals visible to him. By the time he saw it, he'd think he was still in control. He had no idea control had already shifted. While Caldwell went home at 5 every evening, I stayed late. The office grew quiet after 6. The cleaning crew came through at 7. By 8, I was usually alone except for the security guard downstairs. Those quiet hours became my workshop. I printed emails, I backed up project drafts, I saved files with timestamp versions showing my contributions. Every piece of evidence was carefully organized in folders, both digital and physical. My insurance policy grew thicker each night. I documented everything. The email where Caldwell asked me to develop a campaign strategy, then presented it as his own idea 2 weeks later. The Slack messages where I outlined solutions to client problems, which Trent later claimed credit for in meetings. The original drafts of presentations with my name in the file properties before they were renamed and attributed to others. One night, the security guard came up to check on me. "Working late again, Mr. Reed." "Just finishing up some projects," I replied casually. He nodded and continued his rounds. If only he knew what projects I was really working on, not the ones Caldwell assigned, the one that would end his career. Everything was building, slowly, methodically, perfectly. 2 weeks after the humiliating meeting, Claire from Northedge called my direct line one evening. I was alone in the office, still building my archive. "Daniel, I hope I'm not catching you at a bad time," she began. "Not at all, Claire. What can I do for you?" "I wanted to tell you personally how much we appreciate your communication. You really make things so easy for us. Some of the other vendors we work with, they're complicated and hard to reach, but you just get it." I leaned back in my chair, feeling genuine warmth in my chest. "That means a lot, Claire. I believe in making partnerships work smoothly." "Well, it shows." "I'm actually recommending to my board that we expand our contract with Helios Tech, specifically because of the relationship we've built." After we hung up, I sat in the dark office for a long moment. Claire didn't realize what she'd just given me. She created a direct line between Northedge's continued business and my personal involvement. That connection would matter very soon. I added notes from our conversation to my growing file. Everything was coming together perfectly. At a team lunch the following week, Caldwell made a show of being generous. He picked up the tab for everyone and gave a speech about teamwork and loyalty. Then he clapped me on the back. "You're consistent, Daniel. That's exactly why you're useful around here. Not talented, not valuable, not innovative, useful." The word hung in the air like an insult disguised as a compliment. Around the table, people shifted uncomfortably. They could hear it too, the way he reduced 3 years of my work to simple utility, like I was a stapler or a copy machine. Trent grinned into his drink. I forced a smile. "Thank you, sir. I try to be reliable." "You are, that's your strength. You're not flashy like Trent here, but you get the job done." I excused myself before I said something that would ruin my carefully laid plans. In the bathroom, I gripped the sink again and counted to 10. Then 20, then 50. When I returned to the table, my smile was back in place. Caldwell never noticed the coldness behind my eyes. That night, I added another document to my file, a recording I'd made on my phone of his backhanded compliment, just in case. That evening, I did something I should have done months ago. I reread the entire employee handbook from cover to cover. Most of it was standard corporate language about vacation days and dress codes, but buried in Section 7 was something interesting. Clause 7b, intellectual property created by employees remains the property of the employee until officially transferred to the company through signed documentation. I read it 3 times to make sure I understood correctly. Then I checked my employment contract. There was a general IP clause, but it only covered work explicitly assigned by direct management with written documentation. I opened my email archive. Out of 43 major projects I'd worked on, only 11 had written assignment emails from Caldwell. The rest were verbal requests, casual hallway conversations, quick chats by the coffee machine, legally gray areas. A slow smile spread across my face. I just found my nuclear option. My resignation letter started forming in my mind, but not a normal resignation letter. Mine would be different. Mine would be a detailed confession of every project I'd built, every idea Caldwell had stolen, and every line of evidence proving it. I spent the next week drafting my resignation letter. It grew longer each night, becoming less of a letter and more of a document, a manifesto, a detailed accounting of 3 years of stolen credit. The format was simple but devastating. Introduction, my decision to resign. Section 1, complete list of projects I'd developed with timestamps and original files. Section 2, documentation of how each project was reassigned or credit was taken by others. Section 3, client testimonials and emails specifically praising my work. Section 4, financial impact analysis showing how my campaigns had generated revenue. Conclusion, recommendations for how the company could improve its culture. I kept the tone professional throughout. No anger, no accusations, just facts supported by evidence. Cold, hard, undeniable facts. The letter eventually reached 15 pages. I edited it down to 12. Every word mattered. Every sentence served a purpose. I saved multiple copies in different locations. Cloud storage, USB drive, personal email. I even printed a physical copy and stored it at home. This wasn't just a resignation letter anymore. It was insurance, it was justice. It was the truth finally documented where everyone could see it. Caldwell turned 50 in late October. The company threw him a birthday party in the conference room. Cake, champagne, speeches about what an amazing leader he was. I stood in the back smiling and clapping along with everyone else. Caldwell raised his champagne glass for a toast. To loyal employees who know their place, he announced with a grin. That's what makes a great team, people who understand the hierarchy and work within it. Everyone laughed and drank. I raised my glass too, but the champagne tasted like poison on my tongue. Know their place, that's what he wanted. Obedient workers who never questioned, never challenged, never demanded recognition for their contributions. I took another sip and smiled wider. Let him enjoy his moment. Let him feel secure in his power, because I already knew how his story would end. I'd written the final chapter myself, and I'd scheduled it to be published very soon. Caldwell caught my eye across the room and nodded approvingly at my presence. He thought my attendance proved my loyalty. He had no idea it was my goodbye. Trent made a mistake in early November. During a client presentation, he started talking about his new campaign strategy for a retail client. He went into detail about the research, the target demographics, the projected ROI. I sat quietly in the corner taking notes. Everything he described came directly from a proposal I'd written 6 weeks earlier. Every statistic, every demographic breakdown, every strategic recommendation. He'd literally copied my document word for word. The client seemed impressed. Caldwell beamed with pride at his golden boy. After the meeting, I went back to my desk and pulled up the original files. Every draft had my name embedded in the document properties. Every saved version was timestamped and stored on the company server under my user ID. I created a side-by-side comparison document, my original proposal on the left, Trent's presentation slides on the right. They were identical except for the name at the top. This went into the evidence file. I now had proof not just of Caldwell taking credit for my work, but of systematic fraud happening across the entire department. Trent wasn't just getting away with theft, he was being rewarded for it. The case against them was building beautifully. I started having quiet lunches with former colleagues who left Helios Tech. Nothing obvious, just casual catch-ups over coffee or sandwiches. The conversations always drifted to the same place. How things were at the company, whether Caldwell was still taking credit for other people's work, whether the toxic culture had improved. I never said much, I just listened and occasionally mentioned that things didn't quite add up lately, that some projects seemed to have confused attribution, that it was interesting how certain people got promoted. I wasn't spreading gossip, I was planting seeds. Within 2 weeks, whispers started circulating, not from me directly but through the network, former employees talking to current employees, questions being raised, attention being drawn to patterns people had ignored for years. One former colleague called me after hearing the rumors. Is something happening at Helios Tech? Why do you ask? People are talking about Caldwell, about how projects get credited, your name keeps coming up. Interesting, I replied neutrally. I'm just doing my job, but the seeds had germinated. Soon they'd grow into something Caldwell couldn't ignore. Mid-November, Caldwell called me into his office. My heart rate increased slightly, but I kept my expression neutral. Close the door, Daniel. I did, and sat down across from his desk. He studied me carefully. You've been quiet lately, not losing motivation, are you? No, sir, I replied calmly, just focused on my work. Good, because I've been hearing some strange things, rumors, people asking questions about project attribution and credit. I met his gaze without flinching. I haven't heard anything like that. Really, because your name keeps coming up in these conversations. I can't control what people say, Mr. Caldwell. I can only control my own work, which I've been doing consistently. He leaned back in his chair, still watching me. You're not planning anything stupid, are you, Daniel? Like what? Like leaving, like causing problems, like being disloyal? I smiled slightly. I'm still here, aren't I? Still coming in every day, still meeting deadlines. Still being useful. The word useful hung between us. His words, his description of me. He nodded slowly. Good, keep it that way. We value your consistency. Thank you, sir, I'll do my best. As I left his office, I allowed myself a tiny smile. He suspected something but couldn't figure out what. The uncertainty would eat at him slowly. The contract renewal meeting with Northedge was scheduled for the first Monday of December. Caldwell circled the date on his calendar and announced it to the whole team. "This is our biggest client renewal of the year," he declared during a team meeting. "I've personally nurtured this relationship and I expect everyone to support the presentation." I nodded along with everyone else, even though Claire from Northedge had never mentioned Caldwell once in our conversations. She'd built her trust with me specifically. Caldwell assigned himself as the primary presenter. Trent was listed as the secondary. I was listed as support staff who would handle technical questions if needed. Perfect. The meeting was scheduled for 9 in the morning. I had my resignation letter scheduled to send via email at exactly 9 o'clock that same day. The timing was deliberate. While Caldwell was trying to secure the company's biggest contract, every executive, every board member, and every employee would receive my detailed documentation of his theft and fraud. The email would include the 12-page resignation letter plus a compressed file containing all my evidence, hundreds of documents, thousands of data points, everything organized and cross-referenced. The chaos would be immediate and total. Caldwell would be standing in front of Northedge trying to take credit for my work while the entire company learned the truth about him. The final week of November felt strange. I moved through the office like a ghost, finishing projects, organizing files, preparing for an exit I hadn't announced. People started noticing. "You okay, Daniel?" they'd ask. "You seem distant." "Just tired," I'd reply. "Been working on something big." That was true, just not the kind of big they imagined. I printed the last batch of evidence on Wednesday evening. Receipt confirmations for all the emails I'd sent, server logs showing when I'd created original files, client feedback forms specifically mentioning my name and contributions. Thursday. I finalized the resignation letter. Every word was perfect, every paragraph served its purpose. The document was professional, factual, and completely devastating. Friday I scheduled the email. 9 a.m. on Monday, December 4th. The message would go to Caldwell, the CEO, HR, and the entire company distribution list. I'd also BCC several industry contacts and former employees who deserved to know the truth. That evening I backed up everything one final time. Then I went home and cooked myself a nice dinner. I opened a bottle of wine I'd been saving. Tomorrow will be Saturday, then Sunday, then Monday would arrive and everything would change. Sunday night I slept better than I had in months. No anxiety, no second thoughts, no fear, just peace. I'd done everything right, I'd documented everything properly. I'd kept my evidence clean and professional. I'd given Caldwell multiple chances to change his behavior. He'd chosen not to. He'd chosen to humiliate me in front of my peers instead. He'd chosen to steal credit one more time. He'd chosen to call me useful while treating me as disposable. Now he'd face the consequences of those choices. I woke up Monday morning at 6. I showered, dressed in my best suit, and made coffee. At 8:30 I drove to the office. I arrived at 8:50, gave myself 10 minutes to settle at my desk. At 8:59 I opened my email. The scheduled message sat in my outbox, ready to send. My finger hovered over my mouse. Across the office, Caldwell was in his office preparing for the Northedge meeting. Trent was printing presentation materials. Nobody suspected anything. At exactly 9 a.m. I clicked send, then I sat back and watched the explosion begin. By 9:05 the company Slack went completely silent. People's faces turned pale as they opened their emails. I could see the shock spreading across the office like a wave. Someone gasped, someone else whispered, "Oh my God." My email subject line was simple: official resignation and project ownership disclosure. But the contents were explosive: 12 pages of detailed accounting, 300 pages of supporting evidence, names, dates, projects, stolen credit. Everything laid out in perfect clarity. The Slack channel that had been buzzing with morning chatter now had 0 messages. The entire company was reading my letter. At 9:10 Caldwell stormed out of his office, his face bright red. He was holding his phone and looked around the office wildly. "Daniel," he shouted. "What the hell did you do?" I stood up calmly from my desk. Everyone was watching now. The whole office had become an audience. "I told the truth, Mr. Caldwell," I replied clearly. "Everything in that email is documented and verified. You can't do this, you can't just—" "I already did, and I've sent copies to the appropriate parties, including our clients." His face went from red to purple. "You sent this to clients, just Northedge. They deserve to know who they've actually been working with." 10 minutes later, the CEO called an emergency meeting. Caldwell, myself, the head of HR, and the company's legal counsel were summoned to the executive conference room. I walked in calmly and sat down. Caldwell sat across from me, practically vibrating with rage. The CEO, Mr. Wallace, looked exhausted. "Daniel, this is a serious accusation. Do you stand by everything in your letter?" "Yes, sir. Every claim is supported by documentation included in the attached files." The legal counsel, Ms. Peterson, was already scrolling through documents on her laptop. "The evidence appears quite comprehensive," she said quietly. Mr. Wallace turned to Caldwell. "Is this true? Have you been taking credit for Daniel's work?" "It's taken out of context," Caldwell sputtered. "Daniel is a team member. Team members contribute to projects that I oversee. That's how management works." "Then why isn't his name on any of the presentations?" I asked calmly. "Why did you tell clients you developed these strategies personally?" Caldwell had no answer. Ms. Peterson kept scrolling. There's also evidence here of another employee, Trent Ashford, presenting work with Daniel's name in the original file properties. The room fell silent. Mr. Wallace looked at his phone. Northedge just postponed their renewal meeting. They want to speak with their legal team first. Caldwell's face went white. Within 3 hours, my letter had spread throughout the entire industry. Former employees were sharing it. Current employees were forwarding it to contacts. Marketing professionals were discussing it in online forums. By noon, a trade publication had picked up the story. By 2 p.m., it was trending on LinkedIn. The company's stock price started dropping, not dramatically but enough to notice. Investors didn't like uncertainty, and my letter had created a massive amount of it. At 3 p.m., Northedge made their decision official. They were pulling their contract entirely. Claire called me personally on my cell phone. Daniel, I'm so sorry you went through that. Our company doesn't do business with organizations that treat people this way. I understand, Claire. I'm sorry it affected your operations. Are you kidding? We want to hire you directly. Our marketing director just approved a position. Interested? I smiled. Very. By 4 p.m., 2 other clients had suspended their contracts pending investigation. By 5 p.m., the board of directors had called an emergency session. Caldwell was placed on administrative leave. Trent was suspended. HR was launching a full investigation into project attribution across the entire marketing department. I packed my desk in silence while everyone watched. Nobody spoke to me. They didn't know what to say. The following week was chaos at Helios Tech. More employees came forward with similar stories of stolen credit. The investigation expanded beyond just Caldwell to examine the entire management structure. I wasn't there to see it. I'd already started my new position at Northedge. My desk was in a bright corner office. My title was Senior Marketing Director. My salary was 40% higher than what Helios Tech had paid me, but the best part was the respect. People listened when I spoke. They credited my ideas properly. They treated me like the professional I'd always been. Claire stopped by my office at the end of my first week. How are you settling in? It feels right, I replied honestly, like I should have been here all along. Well, we're glad you are, and Daniel, what you did took courage. Standing up to abuse like that, a lot of people wouldn't have. I thought about Patricia, who'd been broken by Caldwell, about all the other employees who'd left quietly rather than fight. Someone had to, I said. It was time. Meanwhile, back at Helios Tech, the dominoes kept falling. Caldwell was officially terminated. Trent resigned before he could be fired. 3 other managers were placed under review. A month after my dramatic exit, Mr. Wallace called me. I was surprised to see his name on my caller ID. Daniel, I wanted to apologize personally, he began. The investigation confirmed everything you documented. We failed you as an organization. Thank you for saying that, sir. We've implemented new policies for project attribution and credit. We're requiring written documentation for all assignments. We've created a confidential reporting system for employees who witness misconduct. That's good to hear. I also want you to know that we've reached out to Patricia and 2 other former employees you mentioned in your letter. We're offering them settlement packages and apologies. That actually surprised me. Really, it's the right thing to do. We should have protected them. We didn't. We're trying to make it right. After we hung up, I sat quietly in my new office. Change had actually happened. Real, meaningful change, because I'd refused to stay silent. The story had continued to spread through the industry. I'd received job offers from 4 other companies, speaking invitations from 3 marketing conferences, but more importantly, I'd received messages from dozens of people sharing their own stories of stolen credit and workplace abuse. Thank you for speaking up, telling me I'd inspired them. 6 months later, I was sitting in a conference room at Northedge presenting our quarterly results to the board. My campaigns had generated a 32% increase in client acquisition. My strategies had positioned the company as an industry leader, and my name was on everything, properly credited, appropriately recognized. After the presentation, Claire pulled me aside. The board wants to promote you to vice president of marketing. Are you interested? I smiled. Absolutely. That evening, I was packing up my office when my phone buzzed. It was a LinkedIn message from someone I didn't recognize, a young marketing professional who'd read about my story. Thank you for what you did, the message read. My boss has been taking credit for my